Shari Reynolds. The following panel group discussion is material available for parents, students, and teachers alike that you should be able to use this as a source of information to talk to your kids about internet safety, cell phone use, cyberbullying, and pornography. We hope that through this information you'll be able to find ways that you can safeguard and protect our children.
Now here we are with our panel discussion experts, and I would like for them to take an opportunity to introduce each of them. Sergeant Jackson, why don't we go ahead with you?
Yeah, my name's John Jackson. I've worked for Spanish Fork Police Department for the last 12 years. I'm assigned to investigations, so these type of things come through our investigative division, so I have a little bit of experience there.
My name is Jenny Decker, and I work for NetSmarts, which was started by the Boys and Girls Club and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And I teach internet safety in assembly form around the Utah County area.
I'm John Allen, and I'm from Nebo School District. I'm the health curriculum specialist, and I've been working on putting together a presentation that will go into the schools that is age appropriate to help students understand the dangers and how they can be safe online.
Thank you so much, each of you, for your willingness to be here and to be willing to help the parents and children. Once again, I am Shari Reynolds, and we are going to start with talking about internet safety. There are some really, really scary things going out there right now with the world of internet, and although it's a useful tool, it can be a scary tool. But we'd like to start out with the video. Jenny, you want to tell us about that?
Sure. It's a Saturday Night Live video. It's just kind of a knockoff of MySpace, and so hopefully you enjoy it.
What's up, everybody? I am pumped to welcome you to the Learning Annex's MySpace and You seminar. Today we're going to help you guys set up a MySpace page so that you can communicate with the more than 6 million young people currently in the MySpace community. Okay, let's get started. You know, this is a slightly older group than I was expecting.
Well, I admit I'm not here to start my own MySpace page. My daughter is spending all of her time on it, so I thought I should see what all this hullabaloo was about.
Okay, and the rest of you?
What she said?
Yeah, what the lady said. Fair enough. Now the first step in creating your MySpace page is to fill out your profile, things like your name, sex, and age.
With the age thing, could my child put a different age than his actual age?
Yeah, I guess they could.
And MySpace doesn't have a way to police that?
Not really.
So if my son was 45, he could say he was 15?
Your son is 45?
I said if he was 45. It's hypothetical.
Well, yeah, technically he could say any age he wanted, but why would he do that?
Well, sometimes people from one age group feel more comfortable around people of another age group. Maybe he wants to put what age his soul is and not what age he actually is.
Well, you know, I am always worried that my daughter and her friends are putting older ages, you know, so that they can seem more mature. Do you gentlemen have the same worries with your kids?
Yes.
All right, you can also fill in things like your taste in music or favorite movies. This way you can meet people with similar tastes.
Oh, my goodness. This music my daughter listens to. I don't know how she listens to it. Must be a generational thing.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What kind of music does your daughter listen to?
Oh, let's see. What does she... Oh, well, she listens to a lot of this band called Fall Out Boy.
Okay, now let's move on.
I'm sorry, real quick. Is Fall Out Boy 1, 2, or 3 words?
Oh, I don't know.
I found it as 3 words.
Another fun part of MySpace is picking out a screen name. And one common approach is to use some variation of your name in the year that you were born. So, for instance, mine is DJ Danny 1979. It's a good way to give people a little more info on who you are.
Oh, well, I don't want to date myself, fellas, but you can call me Nancy 1966.
Nice work. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Chadster 1991?
1,991 is my favorite number.
Okay, well, Chad...
My name is Larry.
Okay, Larry, well, if you put 1991 in there, it might make people think you're 15.
Well, that's a risk I'm trying to take. I really like the number.
Okay. And what else we got? How about over here? Ninth grade skater boy.
Skater Boy was my fraternity nickname.
Spelled like the Avril Lavigne song?
Yeah.
And why does it say ninth grade if it was a fraternity nickname?
Because I went to college early. Like, Doogie Howser.
All right, and what do we got here? Naughty girl hot stuff. You know, I don't even want to hear your explanation, but you should know you're going to get a lot of teenage boys wanting to meet you.
Oh, no, I don't want that. Why would I want that? Let me just fix that.
I have a question. Yeah. Let's say you meet someone on MySpace and want to arrange to meet them in person. Okay. Like maybe you're going to meet them at their house. What's your question? What's the best way to make sure the Dateline's not going to be there? Okay, I'm just going to race through the rest of this. You're going to want to select an avatar, which is a visual representation of yourself. Most people choose to use a picture of themselves.
Excuse me? I was recently in a car accident that severely altered my appearance. Is it okay to use a picture of myself from before said accident?
You can use anything you want. Again, MySpace doesn't really have a way to police that.
Excellent.
Just out of curiosity, what did you look like before the accident?
Chad Michael Murray?
You looked like Chad Michael Murray?
Before the accident, yes. Pretty much exactly like Chad Michael Murray.
And what kind of accident was it?
A severe one.
I used to look like Ashley Parker Angel.
I've been told I look like Jessica Alba.
You know what? My son loves her.
Excuse me.
I think I left the lights on in my car. His lights on.
How can I help you?
Well, I'm here to teach a community policing class. Do you know where room 904 is?
Yeah, down the hall.
Hey, thanks a lot.
You should probably tell your daughter to stay off the internet.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Wow, what a stark realization, and what a great, fantastic job that Saturday Night Live did. Saturday Night Live, yet they made us a huge awareness of how scary the internet really, really is, and what the dangers are that goes behind the screen. Officer Jackson, there's got to be some serious dangers out there in your line of work. What are some of the things you've seen?
Well, the thing I like about the clip is it shows very clearly that people can hide behind a screen name. And when you're chatting with somebody online, they have a name that appears on the screen, but you know nothing. There's no way to know who is behind that computer and who you're chatting with. And it's very clear in that people will lie about their screen names and hide behind that. So that's a concern we have is people hiding behind the internet and using it for criminal activity or inappropriate activity, whether it be a school-aged kid or even up into adults. That's where we become concerned about. The state laws are changed every year to adapt to the internet, so we try to keep up with that. But as most people know, child pornography and pornography is very accessible by the internet, and that's where we become very concerned about that and try to investigate and prosecute that as aggressively as we can.
Well, I know we live in a relatively small community, but we still have some very serious and real internet dangers.
Just recall, I mean, I've been in investigations 5 years, and 4 years ago was when this really started to take off. We made up a screen name here at the police station, posed as a 13-year-old girl, and since that time, there's been roughly around 10 people that have traveled to Spanish Fork to meet that 13-year-old girl.
That's unbelievable. They'd be willing to travel to this small community to meet up with a young girl.
And what's scary about it, those people, when we say travel, some people think, well, they flew across the country to come here. That's not really the case. Some of them came from Spanish Fork to meet somebody in Spanish Fork, or from Provo. Wow. So it's right here local and very accessible.
You really don't know who is behind that computer screen.
And every person we met, they portrayed something different than they did in their chats, everyone.
That is unbelievable. Well, we don't want to scare the parents to keep their children from using the internet as a huge source of information and an invaluable tool. And Mr. Allen here, you have a wonderful other side of things, that it's very important for us to be able to teach our children to use them safely. And Sergeant Jackson, you have the real dangers of it all. Let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons so that parents can just be more aware and more educated. Officer Jackson, tell us some of the very real dangers that you experience, and maybe some safety procedures and some statistics.
Okay, one of the things I like the most to tell parents is keep your computer out where it's open to the whole family.
Excellent,
People
yes.
can see it. When somebody becomes involved in a relationship online, usually they do that in secret, which means they want to use the computer alone. So if it's open where everybody can see it, that's usually the best advice I can give. Again, I always tell parents, get that trust with your kids so you have that trust and they can open up to you if somebody's threatening them or harassing them online. But there is some real dangers, and I just really don't think the young people in our community understand how dangerous this
Well, they
can
think
be.
it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah. And it's here. It's in Spanish Fork. It's in every community around. The internet is everywhere. So.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant Jackson. And Mr. Allen, in the educator's world, it's very important for us to be able to use the internet as a very, very valuable source for fun even, and for research and for schoolwork. Tell us some pros about the internet.
You're right. The internet has been a great tool. It's changed the way we approach education. We've got young people who we consider called digital natives, that they've been around digital and technology equipment, and they're very comfortable with it, and they enjoy it, and they learn from that. And Utah happens to be the #1 state in the nation on having accessibility to the internet.
Wow.
And Utah County's even higher than Utah, and with SFCN in Spanish Fork, we're probably one of the top cities in Utah and even the nation on having access to the internet. So that's a positive thing, that when we have students that come out of Nebo School District, they'll be able to be marketable with technology skills and be able to further their careers and their businesses that they work for. So we really like technology, but we do realize that it has some dangers, and that we want the students to be smart and parents to be smart and approach technology in the right way instead of the wrong way.
Well, there again, we do not want parents to be fearful about having their children be on the computer. Jenny, why don't you tell us a little bit about your line of work and what you do in dealing with children every week when you do your presentations?
Okay. Well, basically, I just present to students all over Utah County. And something that I always mention when I do parent presentations is just how important the internet is to our up-and-coming generation. And I think that parents are just, they don't really quite understand that because it wasn't a part of their childhood.
Exactly, it's not our generation.
Exactly. And the social networking is a big part, especially of teenagers right now. And starting with even as young as 9 and 10 years old. And so I always go over a little bit of Facebook and MySpace and Bebo with the older elementary school kids, and just make sure that they have their settings or their profiles set to private. I also talk to parents in trainings and try to tell them that it's important to let your children on the internet. These are 9 and 10-year-olds just starting to get their first email address, and it's exciting. And so we want to make sure that they know that it's okay for their kids to be on the internet. You just want to make sure you're setting some boundaries. You don't want to be overprotective, because then these kids at 10 and all the way through 18 are going to their friend's house with more lenient parents and looking on the internet, and then there's no control. You just want to definitely go into guidelines, but you want to make sure that that your
boundaries are
exactly
there.
Boundaries are definitely there. So.
Yes, I think I love that about boundaries. Make sure that your children know the boundaries at home, and then when they go to their friend's home, they can feel like they have some boundaries set in place, and they will hopefully honor those from home, even if they go somewhere where the parents are a little more lenient. Now, there's a very scary thing called a grooming process. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Which one of you would like to explain that?
Well, on the Saturday Night Live video, we saw these sexual predators or potential sexual predators in there learning things or putting things in that they could groom a minor. And so we call that the grooming process, where a sexual predator goes from introduction to meeting in real life.
So they find out their interests, their music interests, maybe their location of where they are and things like that. That's what they were showing on Saturday Night Live.
Correct.
Then we're trying to find information based upon what that mother was saying.
Right, that they use that to build trust. And so in the grooming process, and students and parents should understand this grooming process. It's very critical that they understand this, that a potential sexual predator is one going to try to build up trust through flattery, consistent attention, saying, well, we're soulmates, that well, we were meant to be together, and they're
wow,
saying
we're so
that.
much alike.
And then they add the element of secrecy. Oh, don't tell your parents. Who's at your house? And don't tell your parents that we're talking. And usually there's going to be an element of age difference. But maybe they could say, well, I'm 15, but they could really be 56.
Wow, that's so scary.
And then the other thing, that they start to introduce sexual content. It might be something very, very harmless, like, have you ever kissed somebody? Or stuff like that. And then after they start talking about kissing, then they start talking about worse things, and then they start getting into pornography and stuff like that. And by the time they take the victim through the desensitization process, when they say, well, let's meet online or offline, they've already groomed them for something.
And the child already feels safe because we are friends.
And they go and meet them full knowing what's going to happen. And that's how, so our problem really isn't stranger danger, where somebody grabs somebody off the street, but it's people that you know, or that is known, that they build up trust, they violate that trust, and then they take advantage of that. And so every parent and every child should understand that grooming process. Parents need to understand when they are getting groomed with the person trying to get at their child. Oh, so-and-so is just a great kid. Oh, hey, can I take him to the mall? Then you've got those things happening and it leads to no good.
And Sergeant Jackson, this is the kind of thing that you really see in your line of work.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that grooming process can be a very short period of time or extend out into a long, long period of time. There's no set time that takes place. What Mr. Allen was saying is absolutely true. There comes a point in that process where that person is going to either send an image or send some kind of content just to see what happens or how that person reacts.
Yeah, find out their shock value.
Yeah, and it may very well be these times, it may be a very real possibility. It's an image of themselves. Send a pornographic picture of themselves just to see what happens. And again, that's where we get involved. We're very concerned about that because a lot of times if somebody's under the age of 18, we consider that child pornography. And they're distributing that.
One thing we definitely don't want parents to think is that, oh, that's not happening to my child. I know exactly what they're doing, and I know where they are at all times. But do parents always know?
Well, and that's the frustrating thing with the internet, is the internet is accessible in so many different places.
The library.
The library, friend's home, like she brought up, is probably the biggest one I see. Well, my parents are too strict. Let's go to your house. So again, I would just say we've really got to pound it into our kids and build up that trust so they know that that's not the appropriate way to go with the internet.
Another way of recognizing this grooming process is the emotional attachment. And the internet, online relationship seems to build a bond, a very strong bond.
Well, you can say things to that computer screen without having the reaction of a physical person really be right in front of you. You can put your heart and soul out there and just trust that the other person on the other side is really absorbing that and caring about you, or that's not the case. And
then when you've got that heart and soul, that bond becomes very strong. And then you're always wanting to talk to that person. So if a minor is finding that they're getting to be quite emotionally attached to somebody, that's bad. That's recognizing the grooming process. That's part of the grooming process. If a parent has a child that's always wanting to be on the internet, I've got to talk to this person. That person has now become codependent, emotionally attached to that person. And you may not know who the person is.
John, that grooming process is very real, and the dangers are very, very scary. Thank you so much for sharing that, and your expertise is very, very invaluable. Jenny, don't you have a video that is a fantastic clip that you can share?
This is actually one that we show to parents and in our middle schools and high schools. It's a very effective clip, And it shows the vulnerabilities of a teenage girl and just her seeking acceptance and kind of love from an older man. So,
okay, let's take a look.
Meeting a teen girl online is actually pretty easy. You can go into any chat room and just start talking. Most of the girls are usually so insecure and desperate for attention.
Attention from older guys is totally flattering. They're so much more mature and understanding than the guys my age.
Age actually works to my advantage. They like to brag to their friends that they're dating an older guy, so I just play along and pretend I'm really
Interested in the same things I am. You can talk forever and really get to know someone without worrying about looks or whatever. That's the best thing about
Chatting seems unthreatening to them, so they lower their guard. After a while, I start talking about how we're soulmates and how lucky we are to have found each other.
Other people don't understand. I know what I'm doing. If you really care about each other, there's nothing wrong with me.
Meeting them is the goal. Once I get them out of their house, well, that's when things get really interesting.
Online predators know what they're doing. Do you?
Wow, these children are so young and they get so caught up with these adults. And these adults have no interest in these kids, do they? That's very scary. There has got to be some rules and guidelines that we as parents can follow to keep our children safe. These children are so young and they get so caught up with these adults. And these adults have no interest in these kids, do they? That's very scary. There has got to be some rules and guidelines that we as parents can follow to keep our children safe. What do you recommend?
Well, we've come up with 6 rules that we've put for kids to be safe. The first one is do not go into open chat rooms, blogs, or social networking sites. In Nebo School District, we have the chat room piece always blocked. And personally, I've never been to an open chat room, and I don't think I've suffered from it.
Well, Sergeant Jackson said that was part of a thing that you did, is to locate some people who were trying to meet up with these young kids. What is that like?
Well, we used an open chat room to just make a generic screen name and get in there and just simply type stuff like hi or how are you doing and see who replied back. And once a person's in that open chat room, you can see everybody else that's in that chat room too. Again, you only know them as a screen name. You know nothing about them. But if you click on their name, now you can have a personal message just back and forth. So you can communicate openly in a big room, or you can communicate one-on-one.
So first thing, tell your children no open chat rooms, or especially do not click on anybody specifically.
Yeah, because it's very possible that a person that's grooming somebody or is a potential predator could sit in that chat room and not type a thing, just watch what everybody else is typing.
And find out all kinds of information.
Yeah, they can learn about that person for hours, days, or weeks, and then make that personal contact, where when they hit that person with it, it's all of a sudden the person on the other end of the computer is thinking, wow, this person is just like me.
Wow, they really know me.
Yeah. So that's the concern with the open chat rooms, is you have no idea. They can say they're from Provo or Japan. You have no idea.
That is so scary. They've been watching you say, yeah, I saw that movie last weekend and I loved it. And I love this band and my favorite color is red. And then they introduce themselves.
It down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they've been taking notes all that time. Yeah. Okay, so chat room, stay away.
And the social networking sites. I really don't see a reason for 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old to have a social networking site.
And what are some of those?
Those are the Facebook, the MySpace, the Bebo. And I've looked at some of the Bebo accounts or sites of people in our district, and we've got people putting their parents' names, everything that they like on the site, and a lot of this.
Phone numbers?
Well, not addresses, but if you put your parents' name in within 1 minute,
yes.
You can have a picture of their house if you use Street View on Google Earth or Google Maps, and so it's a thing that the internet's very valuable, but an open chat room and those things for minors is probably not a good idea.
Wow, you are putting yourself up to some serious dangers. Well, tell us, what are some other precautions that we need to take?
Another is to recognize the warning signs of potential abuse. And this is directly related to what we talked about in the grooming process. Whenever somebody says, this is a secret, that's an absolute red flag.
Wow.
Or if they're giving too much attention. Now, and there's a difference between somebody being nice to you, being a nice neighbor, and over attention. What would be the
I would say
difference?
If somebody's paying more attention to my children than I am, that's a huge red flag. But if somebody's willing to take my children with them places that normally they wouldn't take somebody, I would be very concerned.
Yeah, why are you so interested in my child? Don't you have friends your own age?
Yeah, but the secrecy thing that he says is the absolute truth. All the chats that I've ever seen is, don't tell anybody. Who's at your home? Who's with you right now? Where are you at right now? So the secrecy thing, and then somebody paying more attention than they normally would to your children are huge ones, huge warning signs.
And it's good to teach your kids about the secrecy offline too, that there's probably even more abuse that happens offline, that saying, okay, you can't tell your parents about this, that to teach your kids, as soon as you hear don't tell, that is something that they need to tell about. Another thing is the sexual content, to teach children that if anybody brings up anything with sexual content, that is a big red flag. And then the last thing is the flattery. If somebody's saying, oh, you're so mature, you're all these other things, then that is a red flag too.
Those are some excellent pointers. I really appreciate that. I, as a parent, need to know what can I do to safeguard my children? And should I come across some of those examples, such as my child, I feel like she's spending too much time on the internet. She comes home from school, that's the first thing she wants to do, and she's hours and hours on end on the internet. What can I do as a parent without damaging my relationship with her, but keeping her safe?
Well, I know we have a cyber tip line, and it's a hotline that if there's any kind of sexual exploitation of children, it's available for you to report it. In any case, if it's a friend, child, or your own child, that's just a resource that we like to have. Just because some people feel a little bit awkward going to somebody that they know, but this is just kind of like, a nationwide hotline.
So parents and children both
yes,
can go to this.
Can go to this. So.
Okay, so we have a cyber tip line that we can refer to, 1-800-THE-LOST. Now, should I, as a parent, feel like it's gone far beyond just a small little grooming process, or they've been on the internet too much, is it time to go to the police?
We have a number of ways. First off, I think people need to educate themselves with mandatory child abuse reporting. If somebody becomes aware of child abuse or sexual abuse of a child, they're actually mandated by law to report that. Mm-hmm. There are certain exceptions, but not very many. There's a number of ways you can report it. You can call directly to our office, and I'll throw that number out, 804-4700. But also the Spanish Fork website has a Tip a Cop section that you can click on Tip a Cop, and it can be totally anonymous, and we get those tips. They'll come straight to us, and we'll follow up on those with whatever information is in there.
Okay, so we have 1-800-THE-LOST, and then the police.
Yep.
And we are mandated by law to absolutely go to them should we suspect any kind of abuse. Well, thank you so much. What else can we tell our parents and our children?
I think you should establish good communication with your children. Reporting on internet activities is very low. Kids don't tell their parents what's going on. In fact, I saw a statistic that it was as low as 15% on that stuff. And so if you have open communication and having the trust build up where kids can talk to their parents when they recognize a little bit of what the grooming process is happening, then they can stop it early. Because if you wait too long and the child gets emotionally attached, then they don't want to give that up.
Well, I know we talked about our children going to other friends' homes, their parents are more lenient, and now they've been told they can't be on the internet so much. But they know if they go to someone else's house, they can get back on there and continue that relationship. So what about being really familiar with the parents of their friends?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, no matter whether it's internet or just going over to play. That should be the case all the time, is knowing where your kids are at and who they're with. I think that's a great idea.
So know the parents of your friends. And as far as internet safety, we need to keep this as very clear as possible. No personal information, correct?
Well, I wouldn't say no personal information because you're taking away, I mean, especially, I'm going to hit on teenagers, that's their outlet, and that's their creative outlet, and you don't want to take that away from them because that's depriving them of that, and then it's going to cause a lot of other issues. So what you want to do is just monitor that and tell them what's appropriate. And that's something that I do in any kind of assembly I give. I always talk about, what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. Putting your address on the internet is obviously a no-no.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
and kids know that, they realize that, and we always discuss that. As well as your phone number. It's just not smart. And with interests, you just need to be more vague. I mean, internet predators will use that against you. They will talk about bands that you like. They will talk about, in blogs or in notes, if they ever mention, my parents don't love me, my parents just had another child, and I'm 15 years old and now they have a baby. Saying stuff like that, they will use that against you, but we don't want to freak everybody out about the internet. The internet is a great resource, and so we want to just make sure that the personal information we're putting on is overall vague.
How about your hometown?
Your hometown.
That way your friends know that I go to this high school.
Right.
How far do you let that information go?
I think it just depends. Personally, I have a Facebook. I'm not very old. This is still a huge part of my life. I'm from Virginia, and so I use that as a way to keep in touch with old high school friends. And it says I'm from Virginia. It says the high school I went to. It says the college I went to. And so that is putting information out there. But I think we just have to look at the fact that it's in my control a little bit. You know what I mean? I'm not putting all my information. I'm not putting my parents' name. I'm not putting my life story in the About Me section. But I am putting a few things about me so that people that I do want to get in touch with me can. But the good thing about most social networking sites at this point is that I accept who I want to accept in my life. I make sure that the people who are my friends, I actually know in real life. And I've had, several conversations with.
It's not just a collection of friends to see how many you can get.
No, not
I'm
at
so
all. And I
popular on the
always bring
internet.
that up. You shouldn't have 900 friends. You don't know 900 people. But I think, I don't know, I feel like you just have to be smart about it. Again, they could use it against them, but chances are if you're just putting down a few band names and it says where your former college or high school was, it's not a huge deal, but again, it's up to discretion, and you want to make sure as a parent you know what's on your child's profile.
And that you are even one of their friends on their profile.
Exactly.
These have been some wonderful, wonderful tips, and I as a parent truly appreciate it. But before they leave my house, I say, where are you going, who are you going with, and when are you coming home? How can I be so sure about what's going on the internet?
You're right. Cyberspace does not change good parenting. Those rules of who are your friends and where are you going. And so as a parent, you need to know who your kids' friends are. And just because they say that they're somebody, that doesn't mean that that's who they always are. And so you've got to be really careful with especially the younger teenagers and preteens meeting people online. That there's plenty of people in Spanish Fork for them to develop friendships without them going out onto the internet to develop people, and because that's your age group that you're most vulnerable. 8 through 13 is where there's the most victims of sexual abuse.
Wow.
And
Jackson.
Yeah, when it comes to meeting somebody offline anywhere, the advice we would give is don't meet anybody offline. But if it absolutely has to happen and somebody's dead set on meeting, never, under no circumstances, meet that person alone. Take somebody with you, multiple people with you. It's like, I remember high school kids would say, I'm not allowed to date unless I double date. Well, same thing, same concept. So I would say don't meet, but if it absolutely has to, take somebody with you.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you. Jenny?
I would just like to mention that just because you develop a relationship with somebody online does not make them your friend. You don't know them. You haven't physically spent time with them. And I think that people need to remember that, and especially kids and teenagers. And just because somebody is a friend of a friend, you shouldn't add them on MySpace or Facebook because they still aren't your friend. So you want to make sure that you are, very, very picky about the people that you add, that you are allowing into your life, because by letting them view your profile, you're letting them into your life. Mm-hmm. And so I have another video clip. It's called Julie's Journey, and it's just about a girl who had an online relationship, and basically she took it offline, and she knew what she was getting into, and that's the scary part. So
let's take a look.
The internet, it's a tool that has to be used properly. It's like a knife. It's very helpful, but it can also cut you. My name is Julie. When I was 13, I started talking to Tom. He didn't act or even sound like a 56-year-old man. So he was different on the computer. I knew that I wasn't supposed to be talking to him, but I did it out of a retaliation against my parents. It felt nice to have somebody who wasn't always trying to tell you what to do. It started to get more like a relationship where it went from just friends to best friends, a more personal relationship than best friends. I would instant message him between 3 and 6 hours a day. I was really upset whenever I couldn't get on the internet because I knew that he would be like, "What were you doing?" And he emailed me like 10 times wondering where I was at. Then you feel like extremely bad about it. It was an opportunity for him to manipulate more. I trusted him more than anybody else. He mentioned, wouldn't it be nice if we were together all the time? And then the thought came up of running away. The night I left, I kissed all my brothers goodnight, and he was in his truck, and we just rode out. I ran away for 3 weeks. The day that I was found, we were on our way to Reno. Somebody reported us and saw our truck. I knew pretty much it's over. And I never really thought the day would come. He's going to be in jail for 25 years. He sent a letter to me saying that it was my fault and that he was going to kill me if he ever got out of jail. I was really upset because he didn't say anything about caring about me. I didn't think of his background, and I didn't apply it to myself, and so maybe he could have done anything to me, even killed me. And so, now that I'm back, I feel like there's this huge emptiness inside of me. If I could have talked to people, maybe I would have had a different view on some things. If you're planning to run away, it doesn't help solve anything. If it does anything, it makes it worse. Little things can end up becoming a big thing. I kind of wish that I never would have run away in the first place. I would never do it again.
That young girl was gone for 3 weeks. I hate to think what her parents are going through. And yet still her predator was writing to her and threatening her life, and telling her it was all her fault. This is amazing how very real the internet can become in our children's lives. And I think it's a primary responsibility for us as parents to make sure that we safeguard them. Is there anything that you guys would like to say to parents and children before we close?
I would just say, we've hit on it a number of times, but develop that trust and set hard and fast guidelines with your computer use in your home. The computer's great, but if they are allowed to misuse it, it can lead to very bad things. And if something comes in that's criminal in your home, call us. We're happy to investigate it. We have people that have attended training all over the country on specifically these type of issues. So I ask you, call us if something like that is happening.
Never be afraid of the police.
No.
Thank you, Sergeant Jackson. Jenny?
I just wanted to mention that, again, Julie had control over the situation. She had control of when she first started talking to this older man, and when she decided to go to Reno with him, and she should have, taken precautions in the beginning and just, gotten off the computer. So
yeah, we do. We still do have control
Definitely.
over ourselves. And Mr. Allen, what do you have to say?
The internet is a great tool, and we want our youth to be able to be comfortable, and when they graduate and they move out on their own, we want them to have developed enough responsibility in knowing the goods and the bad part of the internet, that they can be a productive citizen and be a great family member later on in life. And so by recognizing when there's potential abuse and teaching your kids to avoid that, then the internet's not so bad.
So be comfortable, yet careful. Thank you so much for your wonderful insights and your expertise and sharing all of that with parents and children alike on this panel discussion. Thank you so much for joining us, and please stay tuned for our next presentation. back to our panel discussion, these group of experts, Sergeant Jackson and Jenny and Mr. Allen with Nebo School District. And here we are in Spanish Fork. Right now we're going to be talking about pornography and cyberbullying and cell phone use that we are dealing with our kids today. What is the age group that we are going to be mostly focusing on right here regarding pornography and cyberbullying and cell phone use?
Well, the age group I'm interested in is pornography involving anyone under the age of 18 is considered child pornography.
Excellent. So
I'm not really concerned the age of the person that has it, because it would be a criminal offense no matter what their age is.
So what do we need to do with pornography in our home as far as, of course, avoiding it, but how can we safeguard our children?
Well, we have to know what sites they're going to, and that requires us as parents to become familiar with how to work a computer and check and see where our kids have been. And that's quite humbling for somebody that's never had to work a computer before. But we have to find out how to get in and find out the internet history and where our kids have been, and if any pictures have been stored on the computer anywhere.
The number one thing that my friends my age, 30s, my kids know how to work the computer better than I do. I know how to turn it on, and that's about as good as it gets. And yet we have to be very much aware of what they are using the computer for.
Yeah,
and we just have to get familiar with that.
That becomes our responsibility now as parents. We're going to have to do that. There's just no way around it. We're going to have to find out where they've been and what they're doing on the computer.
I think on the other hand, I think we should put responsibility onto the child to avoid it. That as we see more examples of people ruining their lives because of pornography, the pornography is addictive. I think the police have shown how the brain gets the same chemicals viewing pornography as heroin.
As drugs. And I have never read a study, maybe I'm wrong, but I've never read a study anywhere that says pornography is healthy, that there's a medical use for it or anything. So I can't see what the use, it's all over the internet and there's nothing we can do about that, but we can't, I agree with what he says, we need to put the responsibility on our kids as well.
And sometimes the kids aren't even searching for it, it just pops up. They type in the wrong address and there it is. I have one friend that says that as soon as her kids come across something that is obviously inappropriate, they are to shut the computer. They're just supposed to shut their laptop closed immediately. I guess if you don't have a laptop, you can just turn it off or just completely leave the room and go get parent help.
And I agree with that, but that's also an opportunity for a parent to have a real good discussion with the child, because that's an opportune moment where you can discuss what is happening on the internet and the dangers out there. So I agree with
there's some real dangers. Jenny, you have a video for us.
I do, and actually I briefly wanted to mention that in my presentations for NetSmarts that I give all over Spanish Fork and all over Utah County, is just that if anything does make them feel scared, uncomfortable, or confused, that they talk to somebody about it and turn off the computer as well, so it's kind of, you know, they're able to do both of those things. So
excellent, thank you.
Definitely, but I do want to mention this video. It's a very effective video of Ted Bundy right before his execution, and it's something that I think especially all teenagers should see, just to kind of scare them, because they need to be scared that, you know, pornography is a really big issue. So
let's take a look.
I'm here and you're here because of this message that you're talking about right here. You really feel that hardcore pornography and the doorway to it, softcore pornography, is doing untold damage to other people and causing other women to be abused and killed the way you did others.
Listen, I'm no social scientist, and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend that I know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. And without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography.
That's true.
And it's real. It's true.
That just re-emphasizes what Sergeant Jackson says, that in all of his work with the criminals, that most, or every time, they've been deeply involved with an addiction to pornography.
Yeah, and when I talk about these crimes here right now, I'm talking about sexual abuse in a home or somewhere else, not just online, that comes from online. But I've had an opportunity to interview some of these people that have admitted to illegal sexual activity, and without exception, it's just what Ted Bundy says, that the pornography is where it started. And they may view pornography and be happy with that or satisfied with that for an amount of time, but eventually it gets to the point that they feel like they need to act out on that. So that's the dangers of pornography right there, and it can't be said any better than what Ted Bundy says.
Well, in this interview of Ted Bundy happened several years ago. Can you imagine how much more available pornography is now and how much more widely accessible it is, and the greater use, I'm sure, that you are experiencing in your line of work?
Yeah, if he'd have had access to the internet, who knows what he would have been, how far it would have went, or if he'd have done anything different, I don't know. But today, a person in his shoes would have open access to whatever kind of pornography they want to see.
Wow, that's very scary, very real. Okay.
And they also, the addicting nature of it. That we had a guy that, after I did a presentation, he came up to me and said he had a young man break into his business, and he didn't steal a thing. He was just on his computer looking up pornography. That when they get involved in this, everything else kind of goes out the window, and they just have to have more and more and more, and they ruin their life, just like drug addiction.
Very, very gradually begin to ruin their lives. And it starts out so innocently, and you think it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah, it could start out innocently, but it starts to snowball. And again, in that situation that he brought up right there, it does. It snowballs and it gets to the point where I can't have it in my home. I'm going to commit a felony so I can simply get on a computer. And that will be lifelong consequences for that young man.
Wow, very, very scary, very real. Okay, now we're going to move into cyberbullying. And maybe it's my generation, but I have never heard of cyberbullying. What is that? Who would like to tell me about cyberbullying?
Cyberbullying is when the internet, cell phones, or other devices are used to send or post text messages or images intended to hurt or embarrass another person. That there's a lot of pieces to cyberbullying. And with the anonymous nature of technology, then it's so much easier for people to cyberbully. And there's some real things that are going on here in Spanish Fork and nationwide with cyberbullying.
You're kidding. So what are some examples to give a better understanding of what cyberbullying actually is?
Well, I like to think of cyberbullying as, I mean, it's just taking bullying to the next step on the internet. And so it's not just your passing a note in class and, the whole class hears and there's 30 kids. It's thousands upon thousands, and you lose complete control over it if it's on the internet. I know that I had an experience just at a school in Nebo School District just this past week where a teacher told me that one of their students had issues receiving emails from another student from a different school, but she saved the emails and she showed her parents and her teachers, and they were able to take action in getting those other children in trouble, because I think with cyberbullying the biggest issue is it's peer against peer. It's these students against each other. And there needs to be big consequences, and so that's what today, and what in general I try to tell all the kids is, you will get caught and you will get in trouble, and if you're a victim, you need to take action. You need to show people that can help you what's happening.
So that's what's really heartbreaking for children, is they think they're just doing something maybe fun, or they're taking a risk, but they don't understand the dangers that they're inflicting upon themselves as far as really getting into trouble. And so what do you recommend to parents and to children alike as far as safeguarding them from cyberbullying? And of course, if my child was receiving those kinds of messages that you're describing, what can I do?
Well, the first thing is it's got to be reported. If they're not going to report it, then nobody knows. So, and it can be reported to a variety of people. I know the school district trains their teachers on how to handle that situation, and then they can report it to the proper places. We've investigated those before. My advice would be the first thing, it has to be reported.
A key part of that is that when they get something, they don't respond. When they get a cyberbullying message or something, they don't respond or forward it on. So you don't get into some kind of a
banter going on.
Because usually as a parent, when one of my kids or as a teacher, somebody comes up and tattles on somebody, you always wonder, well, what have you been doing?
That's the first thing most parents say, well, what did you do back?
And what, unfortunately, that in cyberbullying, that somebody sends a message and then you send a message, so you start egging people on for a while, and then it gets more than what they think, than they're comfortable with, but they've already done some bad things and they don't want to look bad, and so they don't report it. So this is another one that's grossly underreported, because sometimes they are involved in it.
So don't retaliate, don't say anything back. Because now it's not the original person who started it, you're now both involved.
Correct. Another part of cyberbullying is the sending of pornographic pictures and images. And this is where Officer Jackson has to get involved.
Yeah, and I'll just give you an experience that we've had that's too real. I mean, this happened here in Spanish Fort, but we talked about social networking in MySpace. And I can remember when a young gal and a guy were dating. They were in their late teens, and she had a MySpace account. Well, when they broke up, it wasn't a happy breakup. And he went and took a pornographic picture off the internet and then cropped her head on top of it.
Oh, you're kidding.
And then used that to send to all her friends and his friends throughout that social network. The downside for her is who knows where that picture's at. It could be anywhere. But it's not even her. It's not a picture of her body. It's not an accurate description. So when I think of cyberbullying, that's what I think of as somebody threatening or harassing somebody else.
And what happens to that young man or to the person who started that?
Yeah, and that's what's bad is he lives in California now, so we let the authorities down there have, but it is a criminal offense. They can be charged, yeah.
Wow, it's very real.
And then when they send it on to other kids, kids think that this is kind of a fun game, and they send it on. This is what the serious part of it is, that you've got good kids who think that they're just playing a game, and they're dealing with something very serious and is actually a felony right now.
Well, the thing is, as far as me being a parent, I'm not aware of this, and so how do you from this point on, how do you start to talk to your children? I mean, now we have this presentation, this panel discussion. Do we go to them and say, don't send emails on or forwards on, or if something looks suspicious? What do we do to not have this happen in your own home?
Maybe take a night and let your kids educate you on the computer. Let your kids teach you what they're doing. Let them teach you where they go, and then bring up some of the things that you've learned and question them about that. But
I just learned about cyberbullying. I just learned about passing on pornography. Or I just learned about taking pictures of ourselves and sending them on to friends because we think that's fun.
There's no
what are they supposed to say?
Yeah, there's no rule that says only one person can use the computer at a time. You can use the computer with them. You can sit in the room and look and have them show you what they're doing.
And say, what are you really up to? This is a huge eye-opener for me, the mom.
And a part of that with your conversation with your kids is realizing how this fits into the grooming process. Remember how we talked about desensitization, that when people get pornography, then it desensitizes them, and then that makes it that much easier for them to be open to sexual abuse. And so that should be one of the main things, that when somebody gets sexual content on a text message or an email or a picture off the cell phone, that is also part of the grooming process, and that they need to recognize that and stop it right there.
Well, you know, something, just a little bit of a side note, but as far as when you said desensitizing, it made me think about some of the ads that are on some of these social networks. I stand over my kids to just kind of see what they're typing and what they're doing, but there's this ad over to the side that is so incredibly provocative. And I point that out to them, and the first thing they say to me is, Mom, it's just an advertisement. But that is a little bit of a desensitized, it's obvious they've been a little bit somewhat desensitized, and that's very scary.
And on top of that, there's cartoons now. If they watch TV late enough at night, there's cartoons, which I've always known to be for kids.
Yes.
That will teach them how to swear, what slang terms to use, and so yes, the media has done a great job desensitizing a lot of things.
Wow, it's obviously very much more accessible for our children to learn about the things that are truly inappropriate as far as our generation was concerned, but now they're just thinking it's just the way things are.
I also wanted to mention just something for parents to know. A lot of times their children are talking to them and they don't realize it. I know in really severe cases, the Megan Myers story, I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but that just happened the last couple of years, where she committed suicide because of cyberbullying. And
because his mom posed as a peer.
Exactly, a mom did pose as a peer, but she talked to her mom before she committed suicide. She tried to seek help, and I think a lot of times, you know,
parents just look at it as, oh, teenage drama.
Exactly, teenage drama, and that's exactly what it is, and they don't take it as, you know, a real issue. And I think that if parents not only have time to go on the computer and detect your kids and have them give them that lesson, but they also read into what their children are saying. I mean, kids, they look it and they'll try to, you know, reach out to you, and they might not say, I'm having issues with cyberbullying, but they'll show it in other ways, and I think that parents need to be willing to pick up on those cues.
Yes, I'm right here very much all the more aware of what cyberbullying is, and I really appreciate all of your insight in sharing this with me. In talking about cyberbullying, because this is so new to me, I'm sure it's new to lots of other parents. Jenny, did you have a video you'd like to share with us?
I do, and actually this is one that's my favorite to show at schools, just because it helps them realize how ridiculous cyberbullying is, and just how you should never say something online that you wouldn't say in real life, and this just kind of conveys that.
Excellent.
Today I'm going to talk about Patty. Patty's best characteristics: she's stupid. Stupid and ugly. Everything she does is ugly. Watch her eat. Watch her stuff her face. Look at her. Greasy hair, dirty fingernails. It makes me want to vomit. Get a life, Patty. Thank you.
Wow, did you see the look on that Patty's face? She was obviously very, very hurt. And yet you can become just as hurt by reading that online versus just having someone say it to you in person. It's just as very, very cutting if you were to read about it online. And it was directed to you. Thank you so much. That was excellent. And now I'm all the more aware of cyberbullying. Now, we've already been over this briefly, but cell phones and teenagers. I feel like some days I'm pulling my hair out with my teenagers and cell phones. Sergeant Jackson, what do you recommend, me being a parent, that I should do to really, really watch my children and their cell phone use?
Well, I'll tell you this. The cell phone has opened up a whole new horizon to investigations for us.
I'll bet.
This is something that's coming in on a regular basis. And when I mean coming in, I'm talking about pornography on a cell phone. Because it's just a media image and it can be stored on anything. And if somebody uses their cell phone camera and takes a picture of somebody else without their clothes on, or a pornographic picture, if that person's under 18, they've just created a child pornography image. And that can be prosecuted not only here locally, but federally in the system. It's a felony. Now, the state legislature's trying to revamp a few things that way, but right now, today as we talk, that's a third-degree felony.
Third-degree felony.
Yeah.
It's very, very scary. These young kids have to know the seriousness of their actions.
Now, let's say that person is 18. They're a senior in high school and they've just turned 18, and they snap a picture of somebody under 18. They could theoretically be on the sex offender registry for a long time for that. Now, we talked a little while ago that they may just be joking around, but I just really feel like kids these days don't understand how serious it is when they get a pornographic image on their phone. And it's very critical when they get that message. I understand they have no idea what they're about to receive, but the minute they get that is a critical point in the investigation, because if they forward it on, they've lost that, hey, I just got it and got rid of it argument. But as soon as they forward that to others, now not only are they possessing child pornography or pornography, they are distributing child pornography.
And you can track their cell phone usage, and if they did indeed forward that on.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes you got to subpoena the records, which we're willing to do, and that's not a problem. So this is a huge thing that we're really facing a lot right now, is kids with pornographic images, child or adult, in the schools or at home, and transferring them amongst themselves. It's a big deal right now.
Now, I can't stress this enough. Once again, we live in a smaller community, but our kids have cell phones just as they do in the big cities. And we are still dealing with these things. And you can't think, I'm a parent, it's not going to happen to me. My kids know better not to take pictures of themselves or not to take pictures of their friends changing or the locker room because it's funny and we're just going to tease, which could also end up being cyberbullying. But they are seriously committing a felony.
Yeah, and they very well may be joking around. I'm not arguing that.
And that's where it actually always begins,
Yeah.
is that they're just messing around.
But what I'm saying is when you look at the state law, it doesn't care if you're joking or not. The fact is that there's an image of somebody under 18 on your phone and you're sending it somewhere.
Wow.
That's a felony.
Wow, a felony for sure. Okay, a felony. What is a felony? What kind of weight does that carry? I mean, I want to know what my kids are going to have to deal with should they do something like this.
Maybe I should explain it this way. The law is set up to where felonies are the most serious crimes, and then you have misdemeanors, and that's where our traffic tickets and stuff like that fall into. But felonies are up, you have a first, second, and third degree felony, and the first degree felony being the most serious. That's where the murders and stuff like that are. The pornography can be a second or a third, depending on what happens, a second or third degree felony. So really, it's kind of viewed up there along the lines of sexual assault, rape is a first degree felony, but some of those very serious crimes are considered felonies.
So our 14 and 15-year-old kids can actually be on the records as committing a second or third degree felony.
Now, right now, currently, a juvenile wouldn't be put on the sex offender registry. there's been some legislation trying to get that to happen, but as of now, that has not happened. But if somebody were an adult to commit that, they would be on the sex offender registry and open to the public to view.
Excellent.
And then you add that to them doing these things at school, then you've got suspensions, especially if it's child pornography at school, that there'll be multi-week or even month suspensions with doing that. And that's either accessing it or distributing it or just pulling it up or sending it on, or of course the producing it is taking somebody's picture, either whether they want to or not. And sometimes people use a lot of peer pressure to get somebody to take a picture of themselves and send it on. And that's also a form of cyberbullying, where you have a lot of pressure.
Wow, we definitely are dealing in a whole different arena with our children these days.
Yeah, and let's be honest, when it happens in the school, there's no secrets in the school. Kids talk amongst each other, and then you have to deal with the hazing and the humiliation and the bullying that may come after that.
The peer pressures that they are feeling.
And the culture really is not to tell on people right now. That with the cell phone world, that kids don't come forward nearly enough, and somebody's got to stick up for somebody.
One last thing I'll say that will be important to kids that watch this is if we find images on your phone or know of images on your phone, we're taking your phone. We're going to keep the phone because it's now evidence.
Wow, no question about it.
That's probably a big deal to somebody that wants their phone.
So when you are dealing with kids, how many times do they say, it was just for fun, it was just supposed to be a joke, we didn't know that it was going to be this bad? Are they always saying, or does someone ever come out and say, well, I did kind of know that it was a bad thing to do? I mean, somewhere within them, they have to know that's bad.
And I have to give credit to a lot of kids that we have a school resource officer in our high school, Detective Sheriff, does a great job over there. The kids will go to him because they trust him, and he's worked that relationship in. And I give him a lot of credit for that. And I give the kids a lot of credit that will go to him with the phone and say, look what I just got. So,
excellent.
And they're also saving themselves a lot of trouble by saying, hey, once I got it, I got out of it, I didn't want it.
Sergeant Jackson, why don't you tell our viewers one more time? Don't hesitate to come to me.
Oh yeah, come to our police station. Like I said, we have a tip line on our Spanish Fork website, SpanishFork.org. You can be anonymous when you tip something, or you can simply call us, 804-4700, and come down and see our beautiful new building. So we're happy to listen to anybody.
And Mr. Allen, you were just saying that kids, it's just kind of the thing that they don't do is tattle anymore. We don't tell on each other. What are you saying to parents and children right now? Tattle?
Well, I'm saying that having a cell phone is a huge responsibility, and that there should be good communication between the parent and the child. I don't necessarily think that the cell phone is a rite of passage when you turn 10 or 12, or even, I'm not sure what age is appropriate for the cell phone, but there has to be a huge supervision piece by the parent, and there has to be a huge responsibility piece by the student if they're going to have a cell phone, because having a camera on a cell phone that may even be connected to the internet, that is a huge responsibility, and parents need to think seriously about what is age appropriate.
And why do they need to have a camera?
I don't know.
That's something you definitely have to question.
For that,
as to what
you could argue, why do they need to have text messaging? But I know it's fun, and that's the new rage, and it's very useful in some situations.
So it's not just a matter of dealing with our kids and homework anymore. The cell phone might be taking away from their studies. We are talking about felonies.
One piece of advice I learned from a person is, if you suspect your child is struggling with their cell phone or being inappropriate, keep it with you at night. So that's one of the problems.
Wonderful.
Kids are staying up at night in their room texting. So
well, thank you so much. Well, we have just talked about pornography, cyberbullying, and cell phones. We've also talked about internet safety. And so is there anything that you can think of that you want to sign off here and let our parents and children know?
I'll say something. I think we've talked about a lot of horror stories today. And I will end by saying this. We live in a great town. Spanish Fork, I'm totally comfortable raising my kids here. I love the people in Spanish Fork's a good, safe place to live. We have these things that we need to be aware of, and there is some crime committed here, just like every other community. But the last thing I want the viewers to think is, wow, I've got to move from Spanish Fork, there's too much going on. It's not. It's a great place to live.
Excellent. Thank you, Sergeant. Jenny, what about you?
Just that the internet is a great place, but we just, we need to be cautious, and we need to be aware of the dangers on the internet. And our kids are being taught it in school, and our parents need to be aware as well.
Wonderful. And Mr. Allen, in the schools?
And the schools, the schools loves technology, and as a teacher, I really benefited from it. But on the other hand, we've got to make sure that parents and students both know where they can get into danger. And I don't think it's that hard to set up the boundaries and to have kids avoid some of the pornography, or if they happen upon it, that they go on to something else and not dwell on it, communicate with their parents and teachers with it, and still benefit from the technology.
Well, can I just say something as a parent in closing? Is one of the things I do before I leave my home is I take the mouse with me, or I unplug the computer somehow, because if I'm not there, there's no reason for them to be on the computer. And so in learning all about this with pornography and internet safety and cyberbullying and cell phones, I already had boundaries in place, but I'm going to really make double sure that those boundaries are really enforced. So thank you, each of you, for your wonderful insights and your expertise and what you deal with children in our community every single day. And thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you aren't afraid to set those boundaries and you enforce them, and that you are friends with your children and their communication is wide open for you, and that they feel comfortable to talk to police officers and their administrators and teachers, and always for them to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Shari Reynolds.